Hello everyone, I am Reckless and welcome back to Planet Zoo. Today we are building the one and only Rocky Mountain Grizzly exhibit. This is a personal favorite of mine simply because grizzlies, I grew up having grizzlies around the area where I grew up and having many encounters in the wild with them growing up as a kid has given me a huge respect for the animal and just an overall awe of them in general. So the grizzly is a ultimate favorite of mine, one of my most favorite animals, and I wanted to create this exhibit to give them a nice home to live in the park. This particular exhibit, as you can see here, is based on two platforms overlooking a sunken pit. The goal I wanted to create here was a fenceless exhibit for the grizzlies to live in with no fences. This is modeled after a grizzly exhibit, I believe it's a Kodiak grizzly in Yellowstone National Park that I visited when I was a kid. The guide at the park told us, this grizzly's something like 8 or 9 feet tall when it stands up on its hind legs, and I thought that was just incredible as a kid, just a massive creature. But at the park they had you overtop this pit looking down at it, and from the height that we were is kind of like, well, that isn't so big, right? And then the grizzly stood up and put his paws on the side of the enclosure, and I remember feeling as a kid as if it was only a few feet away. In all honesty, it was probably a lot farther than I thought, being that I was a stupid little kid, but it was just awe-inspiring. So I wanted to create kind of that look in this exhibit where the guests are standing up top looking down into it. So this is kind of like the best Rocky Mountain look I could create in the park. I wanted to create this with like a mountain range and a nice waterfall. The waterfall took me a lot longer than I had anticipated, but it is my first attempt at it. All in all, I think it turned out pretty well. I left the majority of the waterfall build in here so you can see exactly how it was done. I wanted to give the grizzlies a mix of forest, caves, and waterfall along with the mountain range, because as far as the cave goes, what bear doesn't live in a cave, right? Grizzly bears in the Rocky Mountains and everywhere else prefer caves to live in. So you'll see right here, I'm creating an indent in the side of the mountain to create them a nice little cave that they can call home. This is actually the only area as well where the staff enter. This is the staff entrance that you can see me building here. I'm just widening it out in order to create a path into the exhibit. So basically I wanted like I said before, no fences, no walls or anything like that, just self-contained by the geography, and having just this one hidden staff entrance to look as natural as possible. So now we're going to go on to building the waterfall, and this is honestly, it's not a perfect system, but it creates a rather convincing waterfall, if I do say so myself. The system in game is actually pretty cool now that I've had a chance to finally play around with it. It was something I had meant to do on the beta, and I just simply didn't have time to do it. So here you see me kind of monkeying around with the different options available, figuring out exactly how to position them to get that realistic water effect. And like I said, I left in the majority of my fiddling with this stuff so you can see the process I went through to kind of get the effect I was looking for. It wasn't necessarily the easiest thing to figure out, but once you get the hang of it, it is rather intuitive. So I wanted to create this almost like mountain glacier-fed Rocky Mountain waterfall that are so prominent in the Rockies. If you're familiar with the Rockies, you'll know that they're very jagged and rugged mountains, and they have a lot of sharp peaks and not so much rounded peaks, but just sharp outcroppings and jutting pieces. And they classify the Rockies as young mountains, I believe it is. So they haven't had time for erosion and wind and stuff to wear them down. So they still have a lot of this primal look to them, right? So I wanted to kind of recreate that in the jaggedness of the mountain peaks, but also to create a nice pathway for the waterfall to cascade down. I figured this was the perfect exhibit to cut my teeth on. Creating a waterfall was with the grizzlies, simply because they are Rocky Mountain dwellers, if you know what I mean. So hope you like it. Again, it's my first attempt, so if you have any tips and tricks to make it more realistic that you'd like to share, please do so. But all in all, I think it turns out pretty good. So here I'm placing the waterfall toppers that create like the little bubbling effect as it cascades over the lip of the waterfall. So that creates a cool little effect. They really added all the proper elements in order to create a believable waterfall. You have the topper part, which is the water cresting over the peak, the actual waterfall itself, and then these little ripple pools of where the water hits at the bottom, which is all the elements you need to create one rather convincing waterfall, if I do say so myself. Yeah, so this is my attempt at it. Let me know what you think. Let me know if it looks all right. I think it looks okay. So here I'm just going over the mountains with the roughen tool. The roughen just creates jagged little pockmarks in the mesh to create these nice rugged pieces of terrain that give a nice mountainous effect that you can see there, leading back to what I was saying before about the Rockies being very young and rugged mountains. So let me know in the comments how you guys are liking this series so far. I believe next I'm going to tackle Africa, just simply because there's so many animals in Africa. You have the lowlands, you have the savanna, you have the jungle and everything like that. So I think Africa is definitely the next continent that we're going to be tackling, simply because it'll provide us with a whole range of exhibits that we can build together. Let me know if you have a certain animal that you'd like to see first. I'm aiming towards the gorilla. If you guys have a certain animal that you'd like to see in the meantime, please do let me know what your selections would be. All in all, the response from you guys for this series so far has been well beyond my wildest dreams. I only started this channel about a week ago. This is my first adventure into YouTube, and your guys' comments have been so positive and so loving so far. I appreciate every one of you guys that has taken the time to comment and to become a subscriber of my channel, and I hope that I can continue to provide nice content for you guys well into the future. So on screen here, I'm building a null barrier into this mountain that I've created. It wasn't the easiest task to get the null barrier into the mountainside, but I ended up being able to get it to work in the end. I wanted to have the null barrier just simply because I hate seeing, like fences poking out and stuff like that. I did have some problems with the bears kind of escaping a bit, so I did fill in, as you can see here, the certain areas with rocks, and there's a little portion of the fence on the left side of the exhibit that they could actually technically escape out of. They were still contained, but the game registered them as escaped, so I had to go in and fix that. Here we are getting our two bears. I picked the biggest male I could find and a well-balanced female. Again, this one I can understand a little bit more than the wolves, but having only two bears in a massive enclosure like this seems a bit lackluster. I know, bears are technically more solemn. What's the word I'm looking for? Like individuals, right? And they only come together to really mate. And other than that, they're solitary. That's the word I was looking for. But it's a zoo. I'd like to have a number of different things, different animals together. But anyway. The wolf pack I'm still sore about. I want a proper wolf pack. I had 3 wolves and they were fighting like to the death nearly. 3! Right? Wolf pack, come on! Anyhow, so here I added a nice little gateway that I found on the workshop. This was just the coolest little piece. I figured it would fit the theme of this North American area quite nicely and serve as a nice entrance to both the wolves and the bears. I'll probably mirror this on the other side as the exit of the North American area as well, or entrance, depending on which way the guests are coming in. So here is our first look at our bears, and this is when I start to tweak the exhibit to match their needs, filling it in with grass. They really hate the long grass. They like the short grass, lots of rocks, of course, being that they are Rocky Mountain dwellers, right? So just did a nice pass of this in the mountains. I messed around with the snow for a bit, but in all honesty, it just didn't really fit for the style of park, being that this is like a brown earth style park, more of like a grasslands look. I didn't want to force the look with snow. It just didn't quite look right. So I decided this was more of like a summer Rocky Mountain build, if you will, and just ignored the snow altogether. Don't worry, I know the water's dirty. I did add a water purifier at some point. I know the one I put in didn't quite hit properly. So this is a technique I've been using a lot, where I create a swath of trees and different species of trees in a mishmash pattern, and then I'll copy elements of that to populate my forested areas. It's a heck of a lot easier than simply placing trees individually, and it gets the same effect. I individually move some to position better, but all in all, it cuts down my build times by a whack at a time. Here, I cut out a little bit of just tree placement. You know me, I like to decorate with bushes and plants all over the place, so I just cut out most of the monotony and brought you back in at different stages of the build. I hope you guys like this style more. That way you're not just looking at me placing a million of the same bushes over and over again. I think you know my style with bushes. I can be here for hours placing just this bush on top of that bush on top of this bush, but I kept my same sort of philosophy as to where I like to layer plants, add in some nice color with different flower patches as it goes, and just make it look like a lush ground covering as far as the forest goes. Oh, sorry about that. I had a sneeze. Alright, yeah, so here's what I was talking about by adding just a little bit of color here and there. Breaks up the monotony of the tree lines, but also gives something for the eyes to catch as you're panning across the exhibit. I like just having little patches of color in order to split up the green, and you will see that in nature as well, right? You get wildflowers growing in and amongst the ferns and the grass. So here's a nice rose bush that I added. With this exhibit, I kept most things, I believe, if not all, like region specific to North American. I chose the tundra, the tundra, taiga, and temperate. So if you're familiar with the Rockies, they stretch through all of those different environments. So here we are adding some enrichment items for the bear now. I went with the wind chimes and this stupid feeder, which I ended up eliminating, they still haven't got the feeders working right. If I have any sort of enrichment feeder, the zookeepers just simply don't stock the normal food tray, and the animals end up starving, and it's just an absolute nightmare. So, matching along with the overlooking viewing platforms, the zoo that I went to in Yellowstone, forgive me for not recalling the name, it was ages and ages ago. They had this like rock, if I can speak, this rock retaining wall to block guests from going into the bear area. So I wanted to kind of replicate that, again sticking with the whole no fence theme that I had with this enclosure. I wanted to still give it the effect of something to keep the guests out without having to stick a fence there. I didn't want to just have them peering over the edge into their certain doom should somebody fall in, right? All in all, this rock wall took me about, I want to say, 45 minutes to create the entire thing. So needless to say, I cut out a lot of that. Here we are adding just a couple little guest food stalls. One problem my zoo has had up to this point that I mentioned in the last video is a lack of food and guest items, right? I've been neglecting the actual people in the park and focusing more on the animals, which is all fine and good, but eventually I need to take a look at adding the proper convenience stalls, information signs. So as I go forward, I'd like to just add these things as I go. That way we can do it all at once, but also just keep the guests happy in the meantime. Here's an information booth. I figured this would be a cool little addition to the park, again helping with guest satisfaction. As you can see, as soon as I place it down, someone is eager to find out some information. Nice little benches, give people areas to sit as well. You know, just making it more zoo-like. That's something one of my friends said to me is, you know, the enclosures look great, but you don't really capture that zoo feel in a lot of cases. So while I would like the enclosures to be rather lifelike and very natural looking, I do have to take care of my guests. Ultimately, again, my words are escaping me today. I would like this park to be a 5-star park in the end. I'm not certain that we're going to include every animal in the game in this particular park, but that's something to be determined. So yeah, here's the final product. Here's what the exhibit looks like from the far end with the waterfall and the peaks. I think it turned out rather well. Here I am just adding some final details to the cave, giving it that Rocky Mountain feel to it so the bears can feel right at home crawling into their mountainous rock cave. One gripe I have about this game so far is the power and water facilities. I feel like the range on them is just not enough. I don't know if it's just because I'm making these massive exhibits, but in a minute I try and place just a couple lights in the dark cave there for the nighttime, and I have to position another power generator on the other side of the exhibit just to cover that, and it just seems like far too many. Anyhow, so here's a nice walk down look at the exhibit in its final glory. Look at the wolf enclosure. I'm still in love with this wolf enclosure. You guys seem to like it as well, which made me super happy. Yeah, look at that. I love the way it turned out. To me, it definitely reminds me of the lake that I was trying to accomplish. So, mission accomplished there. But yeah, here's the Grizzly Bear exhibit. My Rocky Mountain Grizzly Bear. So here's a nice look from the platform as we come along down here. What am I doing? Adding a couple benches, I believe, yeah. Give the guests somewhere to sit as they're taking in the glory of the grizzly bear. Here's the other viewing platform. Guests are really liking the setup. Going straight out of this exhibit, as the path continues on, we'll open up into another section of the park. Basically, I want to have 2 entrances to each section of the park, kind of keeping it, well, zoo-like, if you will. This is what I was talking about with the lights. Only half the cave is covered by power, but anyhow. So if you guys did like the video, be sure to like and comment. If you feel like subscribing, please do. It helps me out a ton, and I hope you continue to enjoy this park as we go forward. This was our look at the Rocky Mountain Grizzly Bear. I'm Reckless, and thanks again for tuning in. Bye-bye now.